Hello, I'm recording a demo. Wow, that's a weak ass opening. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna record a quick demo to show how I achieve these extra deformations on my hand poses using blend shapes in the shape editor. I'm gonna go through what a blend shape is, how you can use them, what the applications of them are in animation, and some extra cool tips and tricks that you can do with blend shapes. But first, what is a blend shape? A blend shape is a type of deformer that exists in Maya that essentially adds extra transformations to the vertices on a piece of geometry. For example, we can move some of the vertices on the surface out to create a spiky effect on the sphere without the use of any joints. So this is not bound to a skin or anything, it is just being driven by this blend shape attribute. We can also use blend shapes in an animation scene to improve the shaping of certain parts of the rig. So here I've got this character and I want his mouth to be more turned to camera. So I've got a blend shape here deforming his geometry outward so we get a clearer silhouette. Without it, we would get something more like this, where you can't really see his mouth from camera. So you can use blend shapes to clean up a rig after animation a little bit. So that brings us back to the hands. You can see on my hand pose here, I've used this blend shape deformer to get a little bit more detail so that it more closely matches my drawing. You can see the drawing here in my gesture. I wanted to have a lot of weight and distress with the tendons in the hand where the knuckles sort of meet and overlap with the fingers. And overall, just trying to make this pose feel strained and like the skin is stretching out over the musculature of the hand. This hand rig, though, is really, really soft in terms of how it actually gets deformations, which is good. It's really well weighted, but it loses that detail, and there's no way to get it back. So that's why I've decided to sculpt it back in, and I'm going to do a demo on how exactly you can go about doing this. So step one, obviously, is going to be posing your hand. And for this, we're going to use this pose. Um, so I've got my hand posed here, and I want to get some of this good detail from my reference into my actual hand pose. So the way that we're going to do that is first by selecting the geometry. Now on this rig, it's kind of hard to because all of this stuff is like locked up. But if you go into this render geometry group, you can find the actual hand model. So that's step one. You want to select the hand, go into your shape editor. Future Gus here to give you a quick tip. I like to have my shape editor over here by my outliner and stuff. The way that you ordinarily pull up the shape editor is you go to Windows, Animation Editors, Shape Editor, and it pulls it up normally in its own window like this. If you want this to hang out over here with your outliner, you can just drag this window into this box. And I like to just nest it right in between things like so. And so, anyway, that's a Gus from the future showing you how to do that. And do create blend shape. So this is going to create what is called the envelope for the blend shape. It is essentially the thing that contains different deformations for a piece of geometry. So this envelope could contain any deformations I want to do to this rig. The next thing we'll do is add target. That's going to create your target blend shape here. So the next thing to do is going to be sculpting your actual blend shape. I'm going to make this menu as small as I can make it. You want to make sure that edit is turned on while you're doing this, and you want to have the weight set to 1. On the right side, I've just got my normal perspective camera, and on the left, I've got my render camera, so I can see the hand from the angle I actually want to be sculpting it from. So let's pull up the reference again and see what we're going for. Now the big thing here I'm seeing is that the knuckles are really pronounced, and we've got these tendons in the fingers that I want to make sure are coming out. So let's select that geometry. It might actually be possible to make a button for this using the script editor. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. And let's just save this to my custom shelf. Okay, so now whenever I hit this, it will select the hand, and I don't need to find it in the outliner anymore. So that's going to be really useful. I recommend doing that. Okay, so now that I'm in my blend shape, there's a few things that we're going to use. The main thing is going to be on your sculpting shelf. If you haven't used these sculpting brushes, essentially these will pull geometry and vertices around in specific ways. That can be really helpful. The main ones that we're going to use are this pull one, which has like a little lump on the right side. We're going to use the bulge one, which inflates part of your surface. And we're going to use this valley fill one. So for now, let's start with the bulge one because it's going to be the most useful for adding volume to the hand. So if we wanted to add volume to these knuckles, we can just sculpt this right on like we're modeling it. You can see I'm going way too far right now, and that's okay. Now that we've done that, as long as your blend shape is in edit mode, you'll notice that when we move this slider, those changes appear and disappear. The other nice thing about blend shapes is that they sit on top of your rig deformations, which means that these sculpting changes will actually follow the rig around. So you can think of it like being able to manipulate the model even though it's already rigged. Let's select Armando again and go back to our sculpting brush. The other thing I'm noticing here is that we've got a lot of mass around the thumb. Also, please don't mind that my reference is mirrored. Armando is only a left hand, and a lot of my hands wound up being right hands. I wound up just mirroring my poses for the assignment in Photoshop, but it's not really a big deal. In order to use the sculpting brushes, so I'm changing the size of my brush here. You can hold down B and left click and drag. Now another really useful feature, let's say I've gone way too far, oh dear. If I want to smooth this back out, you can hold shift and left click and drag, and this will smooth out your sculpt. So I'm going to do the same thing on here. I'm going to hold left click and drag to smooth these back out. Let's get a little bit more volume on these second knuckles. And so you can see right away how this could be really useful for just getting a little bit more detail out of a rig where that detail isn't skinned in. Let's also get a little bit more mass on this side, show that the skin is actually being pushed out by the muscles here. I also have a really dramatic, like the ulna here in the wrist is sticking out really far. So, oops. If we want to get the ulna back, we can come over to this pinky side and sort of sculpt it out. I'm holding left click to smooth it again. Let's inflate the arm just a little bit, especially on this side. All right. So right now I'm just going through, adding some mass to areas where I think it needs it. So let's go over this brush too. This one will just pull your model in whatever direction you want to pull it. So we can use this to shape things a little bit better. You'll notice that like there's some concavities on the hand, which look pretty unappealing. So sometimes this is the right tool to use to get things flattened back out. Smooth it again. I don't want to smooth the knuckles too much. I do want them to protrude just a little bit. Especially you can see from camera, things is where things matter the most, is you want things to look good from camera. Let's go ahead and get those tendons in there too. So I'm going to use this bulge tool again, and I'm going to set my brush shot size really small. By the way, you can change the strength of your brush by double clicking the little icon on the left and changing the strength. So you might have it where by default the strength is just way too high and it's doing stuff like this. You can double click this and set your strength. I recommend setting it like ridiculously low because the bulge tool for some reason is always like really wonky. But we can just use this to sculpt in these little protrusions along the back of the hand and then smooth them out a little bit so that they're not quite so severe. And you can see right away that this is starting to work. It's not perfect by any means, but we can use our other sculpting tools to really, really fine-tune this detail. And if push comes to shove, you can also directly manipulate the vertices of a model. So if you select the model, hold right-click, and go to vertex here, you can actually individually manipulate the vertices. Although I'm noticing that Armando won't let me select them. Scratch that. On an ordinary model, you could do that just fine, but Armando won't let you. I'm actually going to pull his topology to be more aligned with the direction I want this to be flowing. Smooth this out a little bit. I'm noticing this concavity is really unappealing, so I'm going to pull things back out, smooth it out a little bit more. And yeah, just make sure that we're checking over here to see that our changes are being shown. Let's make this one a little bit more severe. And yeah, that's pretty much what I did to get this. We can swell the fingers up just a little bit more, square them off a bit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, you know, I didn't spend that much time or do that good of a job, but if you really apply this, you can get a pretty good result. I did this for all 3 of my hand poses. So you can see how dramatic of a difference this can make. Like this pose was really, really soft, not very appealing in my opinion. But with this, we get some angularness. We can exaggerate this line of action, and we can show like where the flesh of the hand is being distressed the most. Same thing with this one. Did a lot of sculpting just to get this pose to feel a little bit better. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I guess that's it. Okay, this is a bonus part of the video. So I've already explained how to set up the blend shapes and stuff. So this is if you want to use these practically in like an animated scene, it might be useful for you to know, number 1, how to actually animate the blend shape attribute, and number 2, how you might want to set up a control for blend shapes on your rigs. So let's say that like in my scene, I want my blend shape to like turn on after some number of frames and then turn back off. If you need to do something like that, you can use this key function over here on the right side of the blend shape editor. So I've got my blend shape here, and let's say on this first frame, I want it to be off. On frame 13, I want it to come on. I would just set this to 1 and hit the key button again. And then at the end, I want it to turn off again. Now, when I go through my time slider, you can see that the blend shape comes on and turns back off. You can also directly manipulate the curves of this if you go into your graph editor. Oh boy, Armando has a lot of blend shapes. So it's this first one. So you can see that like these are the keyframes, and I can actually like manipulate how on or off it is in the shape editor, or rather in the graph editor. So keyframing blend shapes is pretty easy. The most practical application for this is sort of this fox rig I was showing earlier. So this is an old animation I did, and you know, the rig was not able to do everything in the performance that I needed it to do. So that's why I have these extra blend shapes for his mouth and stuff. You can see that as I go through this, these values change because I'm actually animating them to turn on certain frames and then turn off later and be replaced by other blend shapes. So you can see this one is affecting his eyebrows on this pose. So I don't want it to be turned on over here because then it's going to do weird things. But then when he hits this key pose, this blend shape turns back on. And then when we go to the next key pose, it turns back off. Now you might be wondering, I don't see any keys in your shape editor, and what is all this blue business about? How did you do this? And I'll show you. So this rig actually has a control that I added where I can turn the blend shapes on and off remotely. And this control, you can see it going crazy as I go through my time slider. This is actually what is determining what blend shapes are getting turned on and how much they're getting turned on by. So you can see that like on some of these poses, this is only like 1/4 turned on. If I turned it all the way on, it might look a little bit worse. So that is how I did this, and I'm going to show you how to do this as well. So for this, we're going to use something called a set-driven key. To set this up, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to make a new control. So you can technically do this with whatever you want. I like to use a curve, so if you go to Create, NURBS Primitives, and Circle, it'll make a little NURBS circle. I'm going to move this into position so that it is visible next to my hand in my render camera. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And sometimes I like to make it a funny shape. So right here, I'm doing Control-1 to isolate select. I'm going to Control Vertex. And you want to switch this to like component mode. Sometimes it doesn't work. Curve point. Hello? Let's do show NURBS CVs. There we go. Let's select these guys, and I'm going to make him a cool star shape. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So this is going to be the control that I put all of my attributes on. I'm going to freeze and freeze the transforms and delete history. And I'm also going to lock and hide all of these because I don't want them in my way. So we're going to be using the channel box to add an attribute to this control. So essentially, what we're going to set up is a remote control for this so that we don't actually need to fuss around with the shape editor in order to animate our blend shapes. For this assignment, it's completely unnecessary and it might seem a little bit silly, but sometimes, like in that fox shot, you want to be able to have a control with all of your blend shapes organized without having to go in and mess with these sliders, mess with all these keyframes and stuff. So I promise that this is really useful, and it might come in handy on your actual assignment. So we're going to select the control, go to Edit, Add Attribute, and I'm going to call this Pose 3 because this is my third hand pose. We want this to be a float between 0 and 1. And so what we've done now is we've created this little attribute that is just some float value in between 0 and 1. If you left click and drag, this will snap to 0 and 1. But if you select it, hold Control and middle mouse drag, you can actually like go down to the 100th decimal point. So you have a little bit more control. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is something called a set-driven key. That's basically the remote control I was talking about, and it's going to make it so that whatever this value is, it will drive this slider in the shape editor. So step 1 is we are going to go to our custom shelf and we're going to select Armando. Then you go to the attribute editor and you want to find the blend shape envelope. So it'll be called blend shape 1. If you rename this, this will be whatever you renamed it to. From here, you go down to deformer attributes, right click envelope and do set driven key, which is going to open a new window. So from here, the way that a set-driven key works is you need to assign a driver, that's the control that we made, and the driven, which is the blend shape that we just put in here. So specifically, we are doing this third blend shape, Geo3. So this is the thing that we're going to turn on and off, right? Now, in order to set the driver, we select our control and we do load driver. And you can see that already put up this pose 3 attribute I created. So that is assigned already. So in order to actually set up the remote control, we need to do 2 keyframes. We're going to make sure both of these are set to 0, and we're going to hit key. And you can see that turned it blue. That you want to make sure that it turns this little slider number box blue. Then, in order to complete the remote control, we want to set this to 1. We want to set this to 1, and then we're going to key it again. And so now this control turns our blend shape on and off. Now there's a little bit of a caveat. You'll notice that these numbers do not match each other. Like this is at 0.25 and this is at 0.15. What the hell? What gives? The reason that's happening is because the set-driven keyframes are a type of keyframe, and Maya automatically is going to make those keyframes um, eased in and eased out, right? And we don't want that. We want them to be we want it to be linear. So you can see that this is the problem. If we set this to some value, let's say it's set to 0.23, you can see that this is 0.1134 because our set-driven key curve is curved. So this is not going to line up perfectly. So you can just find it. I called it pose 3, so I found it here. It's in the in mesh section in your graph editor. I'm going to select my keyframes and I'm going to set this to linear. And so now these two numbers will perfectly match constantly. So we got 0.75 here and 0.75 here, and we did it. And so now if we wanted to manipulate this this blend shape, we could actually just use our control. And you can do this as many times as you want. You can just add more attributes and set them up to your other blend shapes. And this is a good way to do it if you have a ton of blend shapes in your scene. So yeah, anyway, that's the sort of advanced tutorial on how to set up a control. Thanks for watching. Bye.